All right, people of the internet, welcome to Atheist Edge. I am Kaz, your host, and today I'm supposed to be having a conversation with James Hake of the Hake Report. But unfortunately, at this moment, he is having some technical issues, and I guess it's something to do with his cam not working. So I'm going to go ahead and start the stream right now, and I'm testing out a new microphone anyway, so I wanted to let you guys tell me how this sounds, especially in comparison to other videos if you've seen any of them. Now I see that there's a lot of people that are new here, probably from Hake's channel, so welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that we have a lively conversation for you coming up soon. Let me just see if he sent me any more messages. I sent him a message saying that if we have to do audio only, that's fine for me. So hopefully Hake will be here with us shortly. But in the meantime, let's just I want to say thank you to my Patreon supporter and members. That is Libba Murphy, Native Atheist, Dr. Tapioca Weasel. And that being said, thank you all so much. You all are truly appreciated. And I also want to let you guys know that if this conversation does get going, which I hope it does, that if you have any questions or comments for us, you can just send them in and I'll try to mark them as we go. You don't have to send a super chat to get your question read, but of course, super chats will be prioritized, and I'll try to get through those as much as possible. But I do want to let you know that when I'm having live conversations, I'm not very good at following the chat. So if they're not super chats, I might just miss it entirely. So I'm sorry about that. But either way, it does not matter. So hopefully Hake will be here soon. If he does not show up, I'm thinking I might just post a link in the description to allow anybody who wants to jump in, and we can just have a free-for-all discussion. Anybody who has any kind of beef, if you're a Christian, if you want to have a discussion about atheism or whatever it may be, we can do that. But what we're going to talk about is probably just going to be a continuation of our conversations that we've been having, mostly centered around race and politics in America, how Christianity plays into that, and his opinions on left versus right-wing politics, and mine as well, of course. So that's what we're going to talk about, Terry. So yeah, I think even if he does show up, I could just do that. I could just post the link, and then you guys could just pop in if you want to, and we can just chat until he gets here. And if he doesn't show up, then we'll just keep doing that. And if he does, then I'll kick y'all out. All right. So let me go ahead and edit the description and do that. And I'm very sorry for that, guys. I don't know what's going on over there. Must be the Illuminati, right? 1 second. I have to change the thumbnail and everything. And why is this thing categorized as how-to and style? I never made a freaking style video. Save the changes. What are you talking about? Okay, cancel that. Never mind. I'll do it on YouTube. Oh, I see something. I see Hake. I think he's here.
Yeah, true. Hey, Kaz, can you hear me?
I can. How are you doing, man?
Doing okay. I can do either this with better quality audio like I have right here, or I can run over to my computer and do like a AirPods and have actually video.
I think audio is probably more important to make sure we have a good audio, I guess.
Okay. Yeah.
Let's see what the chat says. If they write against it, then I'll say go ahead and do the other thing. But otherwise, I don't care. We can just keep going like this.
Okay, cool. Then I will. Yeah. Either way is fine. Just let me know. I can exit in and jump in on my other computer, right? Yeah. So.
Yeah,
okay,
you could.
Cool.
Yeah, you could open another one. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, Nick. Wasn't able to get. All right. Yeah, Kaz, I was talking with Nick that I'm a boomer with tech, so.
How old are you?
Right here. All right.
Let's make me feel more comfortable turning off my camera so I can smoke cigarettes, which you should never do, and I do not do, and of course, or whatever. Anyways, I'm still here. Another 10 years to get it set up the other way. Yeah, I agree, Lord Spike Protein, who let me know that I had the banner wrong for the video next week. I had it for September, not August. What a fool I am.
Okay. Testing.
Yeah,
One,
do you have
two, three.
if you turn off the camera on?
Oh yeah.
StreamYard, just to the stop cam thing.
Right. Okay.
Your
Yeah, that'd be
avatar.
better than a green screen, huh?
Yeah,
Oh,
I think
hold
so.
Okay.
Guess I don't need this anymore. Oh, how do you do it again? Go into settings, guests. No, not guests.
Okay.
General.
Dang, I have a.
I think I had to leave to do it.
What's that?
To put my audio avatar in.
Oh yeah, I could. I don't know if I. Maybe I could. Oh, you know what? I could probably get. Could probably get my avatar. Hang on. It'd take me a
You have to
couple
leave
minutes
to
here.
come back in to do that though.
Yeah.
It's no big deal. It's just a nice Sunday evening. Nobody's
True.
got anywhere to be.
All right, hang on. Okay.
That's weird.
If I leave, am I able to come back in?
You should be able to.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Upload in progress. That's okay, right? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no setting to add your audio avatar while you're already in the studio. That is strange. Once you leave, you gotta go home. Right. Is there a level of boomer beyond boomer? What was it we used to call them before? The boomers. Now that you asked that, I don't remember. But I really think that there was a term we had for the old folks back then. My sound's a bit scratchy. Interesting. Let's see. This is a new microphone for me, so let's see if this is better. Is that any better? Or let's try this one too. Is that any better? Spoiler alert. Is it still clickety or scratchety? You sound pretty good to me, Hake. How does this sound? There's an effect on this microphone too. I can.
Okay. Okay, testing. 1, 2, 3. Am I here? Oh, hold on. Okay. Testing. Sweet. Nice. Complicated business, guys. Sorry about that. My bad. Be right back. Anchor Baby was about to save me, but he wasn't able to. Wasn't able to talk me through it. Testing. Oh, I should listen to hear how this sounds. Testing. Oh yeah, here it goes. Good. Oh, that's why it's going on. The full moon is happening tomorrow night. Shout out, guys. Thank you for joining. Kaz, Atheist Edge. I don't know. He stepped away, right? I stepped away and then I came back and I don't hear him. How's the JLP stream going? JLP premiere. Okay.
Can you hear me now? Microphone check.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, now we're both having problems. It's contagious.
I know. What a mess.
Oh, man. I don't know how long I was talking without y'all being able to hear me. Anyways, how you doing, James?
Doing well. How about you?
Not too bad. Are you? How old are you, by the way? Since these
40...
accusations of boomerism.
I know. 43.
43. Oh, yeah, you are older than me.
Yeah.
I consider myself a Gen Xer. But
oh, really? Nice.
Millennial or whatever.
Yeah, I was a Gen Xer until senior year of high school, and then they said, "Oh, we're actually Gen Y or whatever, millennial."
So do you have people in the studio that help you do this stuff usually, or is it a solo effort usually?
Normally, Nick is around the studio to help me out if there's anything that is above my head, you know. But he's out working on his car and stuff.
You don't use StreamYard to use something else?
We often will use Skype. Sometimes I've used with Dylan Burns. I was on his show the other day. We used Discord, which I'm not really familiar with the Discord either. But StreamYard, we don't usually have a problem. Nick remembers having a problem, but he doesn't remember how he fixed it. Or else it's not the same way that we fixed it last time. So
that sucks. Okay. So yeah. I was on your show recently. I don't know if you have anything that you want to follow up about that, but I want to start with kind of Christianity and then kind of segue into our politics from there, if that's okay.
Yeah, that works. Yeah, I remember one thing about Trump and democracy that you'd mentioned, and so I think that'll work out perfectly. Your plan.
Okay. Great. Okay, so first of all, I want to ask you about humility. What is your concept of humility as a Christian?
I think, it's I like that question. Humility is, let's see. When I think of humble people,
do you consider yourself humble?
No, I mean, not necessarily. No, I don't. When it comes down to it, no, I don't consider myself humble.
No, that's a sin that you regularly commit, you'd say.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Because humility is, you can play humble, but when it comes down to it, when the ego is appealed to or pricked or something, you realize that humility just goes out the window. That's fake, that's just playing. And I've seen capable people who have that humility, and it's striking because they don't react in a way that's expected or predictable. They react in either a calmer way than expected, or they lash out, but like after they lash out, it's done, and there's no hard feeling afterwards. Like you have a beef with somebody and you fight good and hard, but there's no hard feelings afterwards. You can get along with them, you can work with them, and you're not even thinking about the incident. And I think that's like a sign of humility, or where it doesn't. It's to where like your ego is irrelevant.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'm coming at this from the perspective of one's self-image, how one views oneself, how you view yourself, how I view myself, and how Christians and people in general should view themselves. So like I have some scriptures bookmarked here, like Romans 12:3, for by the grace given me I say to every one of you, do not think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the faith God has distributed to each of you. And then I have Luke 14:11, for those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and for those who humble themselves will be exalted. And there's a theme across the Bible. A lot of humility is espoused there. That's a quality that Christians, I believe, are called to embody. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, definitely.
Right. Okay, great. So we know that as I'm going to speak from a Christian perspective as best as I can, and I hope that doesn't offend anybody. But as a person who believes that they are a Christian, you would say that you are not a good person. Is that right?
Right.
There are no good people, as the Bible says, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm curious then, as it pertains to certain kinds of hatred. Like I know that you, and correct me if I'm wrong, or perhaps I should just ask you if you can just give me your characterization of what exactly is the phenomena that I call racism. What is it really?
Okay. When incidents where I think that you would call something racist, I would say most of the time it's an unfair judgment or unfair assumption, because of the race. So somebody sees a black guy or a mixed guy and makes a statement about what his politics are going to be or whatever, or that they in the incident of Mark, my caller from the last time you came onto my show, he hates race mixing, and he has his reasons for it, but regardless, on the face of it, it's this race shouldn't get with this race, and that is what I think that you're thinking that racism is, when you're discriminating against people because of on the face of it, because of their race.
Yeah, I do say that racism is racial prejudice, prejudging someone based on their racial background. That's my definition for it. I don't agree with the people who say that it's prejudice plus power or any other extra stuff, because I think that just makes more equivocation. It's too difficult to parse the different definitions when we have a changing of the definition in such a drastic way. We already have terms that mean that, so there's no reason to do that. Just prejudice, racial prejudice, right? And you can have prejudice against someone based on anything, right? You could be prejudiced against someone because of their eye color, their hair color, their height, their weight, their gender, whatever, right?
Yeah. I mean, especially whether they're fat, and the gender thing is huge. The gender, and then also how they present themselves. If they present themselves more effeminate, you're going to start thinking a different. You'll build up a whole image of what they're like, when you don't actually know.
Interesting. I just want to highlight this chat I just saw from Spoiler Alert, just because it's kind of pertinent, and I want to say something about it right now, because he said that Jesus himself referred to a quote-unquote good man in Matthew 12:35 and Luke 6:45, and I think that that's a very interesting thing to note, just because it might be a relevant contradiction of the Bible that we should maybe explore in the
Right on.
future. Not to sidetrack it, but that's a very interesting thing that I wanted to note there.
Nice.
So, do you think that racism, as I understand it, is a real thing, that it actually does happen? And do you also think that it is a bad thing, that it should not happen?
The way that you understand it, people do judge without knowing. And oftentimes the phenomenon happens with the races. So yes, sometimes I suppose it's a bad thing. It's overblown a lot. Like, I think the reaction against it can be a very bad thing, but it can be I think it's generally like a bad thing to judge without knowing. Yes, it's bad. So yes, it happens,
Okay.
and yeah, it's bad.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. I mean, I would agree that there can be an overreaction. Like, if somebody calls you the N-word, it's not okay to go and slaughter his whole family. That's
Right.
a severe overreaction that is returning extra evil for evil. So I wouldn't agree with that at all, of course. But I do want to say that, okay, so we're good. We understand that to be, we're very similar in regards to that. So then help me understand where maybe then I'm missing something. What is it that we are not, where do we diverge? Why is it that you are on the right and I am on the left in terms of this issue? If you have
I don't
any
even
idea.
know. I don't even know I don't even know whether you're really on the left on this issue. But we do. I mean, there is clearly a difference in how we see it, and how we react to it. Like, for example, Mark in Los Angeles. I don't know about I get his point about mixing of the races and how that's been promoted, and the promoting of it is it's like a false solution. It's not a real solution. I don't know if you've noticed that they promote people mixing and being diverse. They promote diversity like it's naturally a good thing, when it's neither good nor bad, in my opinion. It can have its benefits, but it can also have its major drawbacks. For example, people naturally don't get along. Families don't get along. Friends, when push comes to shove, when things get strained, they don't get along. Wives and husbands don't get along. And then between the races, yeah, they get along, and while they're working together, and things are good, the economy is good, everybody's benefiting, people are generally honest. But when there's a strain, or when there's a crime, there's that extra temptation to think, oh, he's treating me this way because I'm white and he's black, or he's treating me this way because I'm black and he's white. Or this happens between men and women too. And people already have a different subculture and different set of assumptions. And they're fed into this notion of racism. And that has been like poisonous to people's minds, where people are crying racism over things that don't even matter. And I see that as an attack upon the unity of the country. I think that if they weren't so brainwashed into the racism thing and into anti-racism, the country would be we would naturally be working together, rather than having these anti-discrimination laws and all these things. These things are an encouragement. I'm kind of losing my track of my point, but the anti-discrimination laws are like an encouragement to accuse, to be suspicious, to get the law involved, in like a private dealing between two people, or even within the government. I think people should have the basic right to discriminate for whatever reason, and it's good business not to be discriminatory on things that are not fair. And so I think naturally people would come together without all these accusations and these big stories that just breed resentment. All this stuff is supposed to like stop anger, stop hatred, but it's exacerbating and encouraging hatred and anger.
Interesting. Okay, so we have a unique opportunity here because we do have a chat and there are people talking about this, right?
Yeah.
And I want to pull up this chat right here from Sir Buggy Goyberger, right? And they say diversity is bad. Okay, now that's interesting. I've given arguments from a physics and biological, medicinal kind of medical perspective as to why that's absolutely incorrect. We actually need diversity on every level in order to have life as we know it exist at all. So, I mean, just homogeneity as a concept is not a thing that really exists in nature. Like even the most pure diamond has some speck of something else in it. But we have people, as you say, they're crying racism, and these things don't matter, right? But if we are going to have a country that is unified, we already have a diverse population, right?
Yeah.
There are already multiple races here, right? So any alteration to that current paradigm would require some drastic measures. Wouldn't you agree?
I don't necessarily think so, because if we start being honest and allowing people to speak their minds, and people kind of naturally already self-segregate on some level, and then some people also naturally integrate without government meddling. And I think that if we allow guys like Sir Buggy the freedom of speech to say his piece and to segregate out as he wants, and
well,
not
I mean, he has his
freak out.
freedom. I like, for example, he's on a left-wing show right now, and I just put his speech on full display for everybody. I quoted it and read it out loud. So, I mean, he has the right. His words are getting out there, and people are showing it. So, I mean,
But
is it really the case that?
But he's rightly anonymous. If he were, if his views were known and he were doxxed, he would lose his job, possibly. There's a whole lot of discrimination against racists, and that is and so that is a witch hunt that's only causing more resentment among both sides. Resentment and accusations and hatred.
Okay.
Like, you're a more reasonable. That's partly why I don't really think of you as on the left that much on this issue, because you're able to take disagreements and stuff like that in stride. You've been exposed to, like, you've known guys like this, and some better than others, and you give people their freedom. That's different from what the mainstream is. That's different from how the government works, how the media works.
I mean, I guess I am sympathetic to the idea that people should have the right to discriminate as they see fit. I am a big time freedom type of guy, right? I really I hold that as one of my primary principles in dealing with anything. So insofar as the right to do something, I agree. But I want to be clear and stress that the right to do something is totally separate from its moral value and weight. So I would say, yes, you do have the right to discriminate for people based on anything in your personal dealings. I would disagree that it is a good thing. And I would demonstrate. I mean, I sent you a video after one of our conversations. It was a Conan O'Brien clip where he was talking about how homogenous his DNA was and how he is actually the product of inbreeding. And it was a funny clip, right? It was pretty funny. But the idea that people would be so insulated to where they would be, I mean, you know that inbreeding as a practice is deleterious to our gene pool. It's not a good thing. You know that, right?
Within families, definitely, like closer relations. I know that much. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, just right there is
in
a
terms
clear
of but in terms of whites marrying whites and blacks marrying blacks and Asians marrying Asians or Chinese marrying Chinese, I don't think that it's I would be surprised if that's somehow worse than interracial marriage.
Worse?
Yeah, I would be surprised if the science were to show that Chinese marrying Chinese is worse than Chinese marrying white.
No, I mean, I think what you're saying is that you would be surprised if there was some kind of scientific evidence saying that it's deleterious for people to racially segregate in a genetic kind of way. I don't think that they would show that to any kind of. I don't have any evidence to that point at all. I'm not trying to make that point, but I am trying to make the point that it's a demonstration that homogeneity itself is not a good thing in terms of sexual practice, in terms of reproduction. You see that nature itself wants you to be diverse in terms of your genetics. If you aren't diverse, if you're too homogenous, you will have problems.
Right. Yeah, you don't want either way to be like the driving motivation. And so
right.
And discrimination can be good or bad.
Yeah, I mean, discrimination in a vacuum, when we're just talking about the idea of being discriminate, like if I see a guy and I think, oh, this guy might be like for some reason I get this feeling that he's some kind of weirdo, right? And I'm like, well, I'm probably not gonna leave my kids around him, right? Just because I get that feeling. I don't have any logic to it. I don't have any. It's not because he's white or black or anything. It's just a feeling, you know. It's literally nothing about him specifically. It's about me, really. It's just how I feel about him. I'm not going to let him be around my kids just because I get that feeling about him, right? And I have the right to do that. And I would never tell anybody that they don't have the right to do that. So discrimination is a thing that is good too, right? Because just like promoting good genes with diversity, there comes a point where you can't. That is a discrimination in and of itself, right? I'm not going to lay with my family members because I don't want to have delayed children, right?
Right.
That's a discrimination in and of itself.
Yeah. You said something interesting. I forget what it was. I forget what I wanted to say.
Well, so I mean, in the Bible, I would say that diversity is encouraged to some degree. There are scriptures that talk about how the Israelites are to deal with strangers and sojourners and whatever, right? And they're even commanded many times to go into different nations and take wives. You know, that's a problem that I have with the Bible, but this aside, right? But they take their wives from these other nations, right? So they're actually including new genes into their gene pool, and these are commandments by God himself. So I'm just wondering, from a Christian perspective, what could possibly be a justification for wanting racial homogeneity when that is not indicated in the Bible at all? I mean, and if it is, please correct me, because I may just be forgetting.
Well, there are parts of the Bible that do say, I don't know if the Bible really makes this. First of all, I don't think that the Bible necessarily pushes for either way. It might, because in the Bible, it talks about it also says, don't get with other nations. Don't take the women from some of these other nations. Don't follow after their gods, because that's oftentimes what happens.
Yeah, he did say that because of their religious perversion. That
Yeah.
sometimes he did not want them to have their wives, but never because of their racial or physical characteristics. Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, to my knowledge, I don't know either way. You might be right. You're probably right. I haven't thought about it like that. Some people read the Bible. I know. I think, spoiler alert, in the chat, reads the Bible in a much more racial way than I understand it. But so there are some people who read it differently. But you'll notice that when you bring it to like present day times, oftentimes like the type of, let's say, white woman who gets with a black guy, oftentimes she is ingrained with this, or brainwashed, if you will, with this racial propaganda that we've had of blacks are victims. And so she starts to identify with, oh, you poor victim, I'm taking up for your side. And I don't know if it's partly because she's into him, and so she's just taken up the him and his ideals as like the leader, the leader's values, or if it's because she was brainwashed into that mindset beforehand, or both. But that's an example of kind of following like the false gods of this race agenda, this anti-racism stuff, which, like I said, is a witch hunt. And
I'll grant you that some of this anti-racism is just racism, right? When people say
Yeah.
that black people can't be racist, that is in fact a racist thing. And as a half black man, I'm going to say, just based on that, it's ridiculous, right? I have personally experienced racism, seen racism by black people against white people, and I'm sure most white people have in this country, because this country is a racist country. It was founded on a white supremacist type of thing. And so now you've got this reverse effect. The pendulum gets knocked backwards, like we talked about before, right? Now you've got people that are racist against white people. And if the first one is wrong, then the second one must be wrong also, right?
Yeah.
And if the second one is wrong, then the first one must be wrong. If you don't want black people to hate you because you're white, then of course you wouldn't want to hate black people because they're black, and vice versa. I
feel like in there, the second one is maybe worse than the first. And I wasn't around back then when the whites had the quote unquote upper hand, because right now it's like the whites are I forget what the F, flagellating. Maybe that's not the right word. I better not say it. They're
I think that is the right word, actually.
Yeah. So they're like, I remember having the mindset, even in high school, when I went over to Pasadena and saw like black people, because down where I grew up, it was mostly Hispanic and Asian. I remember specifically having the idea in my head, oh, I better not look racist, just because I was looking at black people. And what kind of brainwashing did I have that I didn't want to look racist? So there's something that happens to whites and to blacks that makes us act and think in totally unnatural ways, because
it's history, isn't it?
It's partly history, but it's also propaganda. Like, history is, you look at stuff that happens today, and you look at the news, and you look at how the news casts it in a light that's dishonest. I wonder how much of history is cast in that dishonest light that was cast by the mainstream media today, But anyway, I'm thinking that
if we want to get into it's just interesting that you say that, right? Because if we want to get into adjudicating the veracity of any historical claims and accounts, like, oh my God, if we're going to go back to the Bible,
I disavow for the sake
of no. Like, if we're going to go there, then we're going to go far back, and I'm going to be
I'm fine.
A lot to say,
It's very
because the Bible as a historical narrative and all the evidence against that being some kind of actually historical document is overwhelming to my knowledge. But to be able to look at that thing and say, I'm just going to believe that it's true, and and take it for what it's worth, and then look at history from not even that long ago that has, you know, firsthand accounts and maybe even video evidence, maybe audio evidence, you know, definitely
Right.
records, and, you know, at least journalism that had some kind of American kind of standard that we can identify, that was totally absent in the ancient Near East.
Right.
Then, I just don't know what we're doing at that point. Like, that's a very difficult situation to be in from your perspective, I think.
Yeah, it's
But
interesting.
I agree. History is propaganda. A lot of history. I would say that, especially the further back you go into the late 2000 BC or whatever, or
Right.
2000 years ago, a lot of it is propaganda. Almost all of it is. And the more recent you get, now that we have real video, we're at this like sweet spot in history. Actually, I think we just passed it, where we had video that you could kind of trust, and now you've got AI, and now even that's out the window.
Yeah, true. It's wild. It's very interesting times. It's funny because the mainstream characterizations of what went down in, say, like Charlottesville, Virginia. I don't know if you're familiar with that incident, but there was a rally that turned into a riot because the police weren't able to separate the whites who were protesting the tearing down of Confederate monuments from the Black Lives Matter and Antifa over there. And a girl got killed because a guy drove into a crowd after his car was getting hit by Antifa swinging things at his car. And the characterization of what went down, Trump, in my opinion, was the closest to the truth. He was like, there was violence on many sides. And the media and the rest of the politicians were like, oh no, we only condemn the white supremacists, not the anti-racists, not the Antifa. But you have to like be honest about both sides, but you don't have to. And the media is not. And it's funny because, like you said, there is, if you really drill down into the video footage and you talk to the independent journalists who were there, some of them are not right-wing journalists. They like, oh yeah, most of the violence started from the left. There were some guys who were the National Workers' Party that was aggressive with the anti-racists, but by and large, it was the leftists. So, yeah, in terms of the Bible, I don't really, it doesn't matter to me whether evolution is real or not, or whether the different things of the Bible were even meant to be taken the way that a lot of people take them now, as like, this definitely happened this way and it physically, literally happened, because that's not why I like the Bible. I like it because of the principles that I hear in it and the lessons that I get from it just ring true about, like what you were talking about with the humility and all that stuff.
Humility,
that's more important.
Loving your neighbor.
Yeah.
Right. And
stuff like that is more important than whether this thing happened this way, like it's like exactly like it's written. Because maybe those people wrote it down and they didn't necessarily mean for us to be reading it like we read it.
Yeah,
I don't know. Somebody who knows stuff, somebody who knows how those people wrote back then may be able to answer that better. I haven't been interested enough to look into it.
I would, though, say that I have not heard any of these claims about the violence that was taking place towards the guy who ran down the people at the Charlottesville thing.
Right.
If that could just be a function of the bias in the media that you said, and I'd love some kind of link or evidence that could, sway me that way, because, as I can sympathize with being a person in a car surrounded by a mob.
Yeah.
Right? And if that's the mindset that you're espousing that he was in, he's not a racist. He's not a guy who hates black people. He's not a guy who just
he's probably a racist.
Down.
He probably hates them. He was definitely had issues, and he probably had anger issues. I think he went after his mother, and she had to call the police on him. He was like,
why are we defending this guy?
I'm only bringing up the fact that I'm not even defending him. I'm just bringing up the fact that most of the violence was from the left, and his turning down that thing was not necessarily just unprovoked. So I'm not even defending him. I'm just saying I'm just saying
Just based
that
on the evidence you just gave me, I wouldn't be able to give him that benefit of the doubt. That's for sure. I definitely have to see some evidence to see that before I conclude that he was not the aggressor. But I mean, it's possible.
he was probably. I can't tell whether he was to this day. I don't know whether he was afraid or angry when he turned down that thing. People say, "Oh, he was afraid," but I haven't looked into it further than I saw the video of Antifa smacking his car on the tail lights and the side of his car with like sticks, and then he turns down that thing. And they might have been hitting his car because he was driving too fast. He's like this young guy who has some level of autism or something, and he was an adult young man living with his mother, and he drove down all angry and excited and joined in with one of the more I guess extreme parts of that group, and now he's suffering for it, and that woman is dead too.
Yeah, that's horrible. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that we can both agree that, I hope that we can both agree that when it comes to violence, that is the line that we must never cross, because we have so much responsibility, so much bloodshed can be on our hands if we even begin to entertain that kind of notion. Like, imagine being one of that guy's friends and encouraging him to go down there, and now he's locked up, right? And or imagine being that woman's friend and encouraging her to hit the car, and now she's dead. And just the blood that can end up on your hands just from even thinking that it's okay to begin the violent spiral into the drain of history is not a good idea. We must always try to use our words first, right?
Yeah, and it's more than just the violence. I think that you have to nip it even before it comes to that, because I saw this article from Slate, maybe multiple articles, that mental illness does not cause mass murders. This psychologist woman said anger does. And I think that's the case with ideology. You know, some people get into different types of different ideologies, whether it's so-called white supremacist or whatever. And most of the people who get into all these different ideologies don't ever end up doing anything illegal or that wrong. But some of these ideologies get demonized by people for a political agenda, you know, to have a boogeyman. And that just causes more and more like wrongdoing. It's kind of like what we were talking about before, where whites were racist against blacks supposedly, and then blacks are supposedly racist against whites. And I don't really like to call it racism, because if you're hating anybody, it's not as if, yeah, you're always going to have you're always going to play favorites, but you're never going to treat anybody really right. It's never really going to come from a pure place anyway. But it's like the Hatfields and it's the Hatfields and the McCoys. Like, it's never going to end. So you can be like everything but violence, and you're still being evil with somebody, and you're going to drive that person, because people are prone to violence. Some people are, men are anyway, especially, are going to eventually, especially men, in terms of they're more capable. They're more their violence is more damaging, because women are violent too, but it's less damaging. At least in terms of they're less effective at it. It's more than just violence that you have to like stop. It's this lies, accusations, all this anger should not be encouraged. And right now it's encouraged big time. They're encouraging anger against Trump. They're encouraging anger against racism, which is just, anger is that type of anger. That's evil. It's blinding.
You know, it's interesting you bring up Trump because one of the big accusations against him is that he was saying that that you need to go down and fight for your country, right? And
Right.
I just want to point out, I still think that what he said and the way he said it in the context was very incendiary, and he does have some liability for those events. But I do want to say that if you look and you listen, you will hear people on both sides of the aisle using that word "fight."
Right.
Very, very liberally. They love that word because it's an emotional word, and when you tell somebody they need to fight, it kind of gets them going. This kind of maybe triggers that fight or flight response or something. I don't know how that could work, but you know, I
Good
think that
point.
people need to stop using the even speaking in these incendiary kind of ways. And to whatever extent that I do it, I apologize, and I will try my best in the future not to do it. But yeah, you're right. We definitely need to tone down the rhetoric. It's if you hate me and you're not doing anything to hurt me, then have your hatred and choke on it, you know, but I don't
Yeah.
need to go after you for it, you know?
Yeah, that's true. It's interesting. You make a great point that uh he's not really talking any differently from how people normally talk. But when you have the context of it, the context of what happened afterwards, you can cast it as though he wanted this to happen. And I heard Destiny on the other day on another show saying he wanted that violence to happen. I'm like, in what world did Trump want violence to happen? Like, how do you imagine that he thought that that would succeed
I
when
don't think he even considered violence as a possibility. I think that he
right?
did not care what happened as long as the result was he was president at the end of the day.
In my impression of what he wanted to have to go down was them to speak their piece peacefully, respecting police, because he's a boomer who likes protests that respect police, and he wanted Pence to, in his view, correct the results of the election because he felt that it was wrong, which I disavow for the sake of the channels. So that's how I feel and that's if you listen to him to this day, that's basically how he says things.
I mean, it's just my general impression of him, the way that I can't speak to his motivations from any kind of level of certainty. I just, from what I've seen of him, the rhetoric that he used, and my judgment of him, I can't imagine that he even gave one second thought to the possibility of violence or death because of what he said. And even if he had thought about it, he probably just disregarded it immediately as whatever.
Yeah,
But,
I don't think that
that's just all useless speculation, right?
yeah, it was a little bit surprising when it did happen. I wonder if he had any inkling. I know that he knew that it was a big security event, and he talked about wanting more, supposedly offering Pelosi and whoever more National Guard, like 10,000 more National Guard there, because it was a big crowd. And he knows he's not a fool. He knows big crowds can get unruly. But it's interesting how they try to blame him for it and just try to call it an insurrection. To me, that's wild.
I mean,
I think people are. I think people are
Go ahead.
really hysterical about it. Like they're going way further. Like to call him like a threat to democracy is way. He's doing this because he loves the country and he sees it going down the wrong path, and so he's trying to correct that path. And that's all I've ever seen from him, and that's how I see all of his actions is being towards that. He's like always wanted law and order. He didn't want riots. He didn't want the Black Lives Matter riots, and he didn't want January 6th. He didn't want the people being shut down from the virus unnecessarily. He wanted people functioning and doing business and the economy going well. He wanted to stop the illegal immigration problem. And he's like the only one in the whole government, from Democrats to Republicans, who wanted to actually stop that
Well, see, I
immigration.
mean,
So
you
I
say
think that's
that, right? But like, they just had a bipartisan immigration bill that came before the House, and Trump lobbied to kill that bill based
right.
on simply the fact that he didn't get to introduce it. And I mean, how can we say on one hand he cares about shutting down the border, but on the other hand he will leave it open for X amount of months until he's able to take presidency just so that he can take the credit? Obviously, his motivation has nothing to do with the border or the country. It's just himself, right? I mean, how can we conclude anything else?
But how do you know that it's just because he wasn't the one to introduce it? How do you know that it wasn't because these people have never shut the border down in decades? These same people who've been in Congress, So he didn't trust their bill, perhaps.
Well, I mean,
Like,
he can read it.
how are you going to say that?
He can have Chat GPT read it if he doesn't want to read it himself.
Well, hold
like,
on, hold on. Do you really think that these people would have stopped the illegal immigration problem even after they let it, when they're the same people basically who have let it go on and on and on for decades? Because illegal immigration has been a problem.
They would do anything to maintain their power. I think that if they feel like their power is threatened because Democrats are also starting to move towards wanting more secure borders, then they will definitely switch on a dime in a heartbeat to do that.
I know, but they're not really going to solve the problem. They'll look like they're solving the problem because immigration.
Just all politicians, right?
Yeah, they're politicians. There is a big motivation for both Democrats and I think Republicans to keep the borders open for illegal immigration. Otherwise, they wouldn't have allowed it to go on for so many decades. There's the money that there's the cheap labor side. There is the
Republicans are motivated by that too, right? Republicans own lots of
that's what I said,
and businesses down here. They want immigration to stay open,
Yeah, and then there's new voters because when they have children, those are Americans. The anchor baby situation, and
which generally tend to lean Republican, from what I understand.
I don't know. Maybe I don't think so. They become pretty corrupt. I mean, the younger generations in general are leaning more and more away from Republicans. But
well, I mean, let me just share this with you, right? Because this conversation came up between me and my father, who is also a Trump supporter, also a Republican,
nice.
Very in line with you in a lot of ways, right? And he was saying to me something about how 5,000 immigration encounters would trigger a shutdown, and how this was some kind of bad thing because it was tying the president's hands, right? And I want to know first, before I explain what I understand of it now, what you think of that whole claim, if you've heard of it yet.
I'd heard something to that effect, where they'll let something like 4,099 or something like that. But if it gets above that, then they'll shut it down completely. That is, to me, they're just playing games. Like they're playing like they're stemming the flow so that they can not look so bad. I think that they like to have a little bit of a crisis all the time. And again, they want these people coming in. We have very low birth rates among white Americans, among Black Americans who are native born, and among educated people in general, not having children. And immigrants and illegals are bringing in children and population and workers. And then we have like a welfare issue going on where the older people are not, they're going out of the workforce. And there's a lot of people who are basically spoiled. And so you have, this is part of the economy, basically. It's entrenched into the economy. So I don't trust the bill to fix anything, because the politicians and the businesses don't care about what the people want. They don't care about the law, whereas Trump does, and he wants to make it work, but in a with integrity rather than the way it is.
It's interesting, right? Because when I looked into it, what I found was that the bill is actually about a maximum number of encounters for illegal migrants that would trigger an automatic shutdown of the border, which seems to me to be right in line with what you guys want. I don't understand where the hesitancy is, because it's not as if it's saying we have to allow this number of people in. It's saying that if we get this number of people, we're definitely going to stop letting anybody in. And
they should do that already. Like that's not all that's in the bill. I don't know what, I just know, I didn't even look into the bill. I already know that these people are not trustworthy. I know that they haven't shut it.
But I mean, it wouldn't be different with a Republican-sponsored bill. You'd have snuck in stuff there too.
Bipartisan, to me, bipartisan means evil. Like, I already know that the Republicans are not trustworthy, except for Trump. And
so you want a king, basically.
I don't care either way. I don't care either way whether we have a king. I'm just saying that the Republicans are phony politicians, and the Democrats are just off the deep end evil. And so why would you trust anything that comes out of them?
So then what are we doing here? I mean, if Trump is the only salvation for America, if we can't trust anybody else, then we're basically going to sell out democracy, right?
No, because I mean, I don't even believe in democracy. I think it's the wrong word for it.
Okay, but, so there you go. You are a Trump supporter. You don't believe in democracy. You don't care if there's a king.
Because it's not a. We always say it's not a democracy. It's a republic.
Yeah, that is a republic.
It's a boomer. It's a boomer point, but it's a.
It's not a point. It's beyond stupid. It's saying that, and I know not to call you stupid. I'm sorry. I'm just saying, like, a republic is a form of democracy the way a thumb is a form of a finger. Right? There are several different kinds of democracies. There's direct democracy. There's representative democracy. There's I don't even know if there's any other ones. But I mean, those might be the only two, right? But those two different kinds at least, and that's just the different ways you can democratically interact with your government. It has nothing to do with an alternative. An alternative to democracy is authoritarianism. It's a king, it's a monarch, or a committee, or some other kind of select group that controls everything, and nobody else has anything to say about it.
You know what I secretly think? I secretly think that that more people voted for Trump, and I don't think that that this threat to democracy stuff that they're accusing Trump of, I think they're accusing him of trying to do what they did. I think they were very subversive in that they lied about him, they undermined him, even his own the executive branch, which is filled with people who are largely Hillary supporters. If you look at the donations of the executive branch bureaucracies, 95% voted for Hillary Clinton. I mean, 95% of the donations went to Hillary Clinton. We have a social media that campaigned against Trump nonstop, caricaturing his every statement in dishonest ways and hysterical ways. We have a dishonest bunch of local governments and local precincts that will cheat and lie and steal and cry racism on you if you try to stop them, or if you try to say, hey, what are you doing? Hold on. So I think the subversives are the people who are the establishment government, which has been dysfunctional, not well liked by either side. And now they're playing like they care so much about democracy, when Trump is the one who cares about what's right. And the Trump supporters are falsely maligned by these people, and they're trying to turn the useful idiots, if you will, against Trump and his supporters. When Trump and his supporters are probably the best friends to the people who are brainwashed against him.
Okay, so I hear what you're saying, but then I want you to try to empathize with me or anybody else who might value democracy as I do. Based just on what you said, your lack of your indifference, not lack of, but your indifference of democracy as a value, and your support of Trump. Those are correlated, are they not?
No, my indifference about democracy is because most people are stupid. Most of us are stupid, and the more spoiled our country gets, the more loose we are with our freedoms and our money, and the more we're going to be in decline, like the Roman Empire and other things. So Louis, I forget what the guy's name, Alexis de Tocqueville, might have said something to the effect of, this democracy, or whatever he called it, will only work until the politicians realize that they can bribe the voters to vote away their freedoms. And that's what's been happening. We've gotten into more and more welfare programs, and just giving up freedoms. Freedom of speech is on the way out. The Second Amendment seems like it's in peril, and unlawful searches and seizures and all kinds of stuff. We're becoming more of a police state because we're becoming more of a criminal state, and they don't mind us becoming a criminal state because they want to do a police state and have more power on us, and they want to pretend to swoop in and save us. So I think that I've seen a problem with this democracy stuff for a long time. It doesn't have much to do with Trump.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused. Okay. Let me try to straighten this out in my head, right? Because you're saying that freedoms are under attack by democracy?
Yes. The people are so foolish. Yeah.
Is to have less democracy.
Yeah. You don't want every idiot voting. You don't want the majority rule. We're going into more and more democracy as opposed to like a constitutional republic. We're going into mob rule.
Direct democracy.
Yeah, we're going more and more into direct democracy. We saw that with the vote in 2020, where they completely loosened up and changed the rules of how you vote, what precinct you go to. You can go to any old precinct. Everybody gets mail-in ballots. They made it so easy for any idiot to vote, and they got rid of signatures and all kinds of stuff. So Trump has been calling for, and many conservatives, Tea Partiers and others have been calling for voter integrity, voter ID and stuff like that. And they call it this ridiculous thing, racist. And you're telling me that these people care about integrity of elections and democracy. I don't think that they do. I think they care about power, and they're pretending to care about democracy.
Well, I mean, it's a complicated one, that one. I think that in terms of voter registration and ID, I think that I am totally fine with requiring identification as long as identification is free of charge. Anybody can walk into a DPS and get an ID that is an American citizen without paying for it.
All right.
I don't think that you should have to pay to vote.
Interesting. I think that not necessarily. I don't necessarily agree, because then when you say that, people go down the road of, oh well, I mean, people have to pay for transportation. Now we have to provide free transportation. Oh, people don't have time to wait in line. You have to force. You have to. Well, you start having to do all kinds of
it's called
things.
Your legs. If you have your legs, nobody can. If you have no legs, then I would say, yeah, maybe we should provide them transportation. But if you have legs, then I'm not worried about that. I think that in terms of things that we don't have, the government is not a natural thing.
Does it cost money to get an ID in the DMV?
I believe so. Yeah, I'm not sure how much it is, but I know how much that it does cost money. I think.
I don't think that they should provide it any different from that then, because that's probably a marginal amount that any responsible adult, like, how much does it cost to get an ID in the?
Let's see. I'm gonna Google it. State ID.
If it's $20 or $40, I don't think that you should have to provide that for free. I think they should pay for it themselves. And if it is free, okay, fine. But I don't think that they should change it.
$16.
Okay. See, that's reasonable. Anybody should be able to afford that. And if they can't, then they have other problems. And they don't need to be worrying about. And they don't need to be worrying about voting.
Problems. That's what I'm asking you. Does having other problems mean that one should not be able to vote?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think that they should I don't think that they should be concerning themselves with voting if they can't afford $16 every 2 years or in their lifetime to get an ID, or, every 10 years or however long an ID lasts.
I mean, it's an interesting concept. I'm wondering, though, if you get your way and it goes down to where there's a Republican, I guess, king or whatever that dictates the ID.
But I'm not asking for a king necessarily. I want him to be he doesn't even want to be king. You'll notice that he did things to weaken himself. I mean, he did things to weaken the government and to strengthen people's freedoms. But go ahead. Yeah.
Let's just say you get your Republican regime, right? They institute these laws that you want, and they set up a test for voting, and you go to take the test and you don't make the cut. How would you feel about it then? I'm wondering if you would still be okay with it if you end up on the out group.
I would be fine with it if the majority are like the saner, more responsible cohort. In the olden days, we had landowners voted. And if we went back to something like that, and that would cut me out. I know that it would cut a lot of people out, and it would include a lot of people who might don't want voting, or who might disagree with, but I don't want them voting either.
Okay, so that's interesting, right? Because that is you are undermining the actual existence of America as an idea.
Not really, though, because that's how America was.
Let me make my argument. Yeah. Because the entire the rallying call of the revolution against King George was no taxation without representation. You remember that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to have people be taxed, to have laws against them, to be under the rule of a government, and have no representation.
I don't necessarily want them taxed. Like, if we shrank down the government, how much would they really have to be taxed?
Well,
I think that would be. Let's say if you pay taxes,
you want the lower classes to be taxed, right? You don't. You're not for these child tax credits, are you? Are you for allowing poor people to not pay taxes?
I don't know. It depends on the taxes. I'm not really into taxes.
I know you're not a tax the rich kind of guy, right?
No, I'm for. I'm not. I don't know. I think that a lot of these taxes are probably unconstitutional, and they changed the Constitution to allow the taxes and all kinds of stuff like that. But
because only the property owners can vote,
property tax shouldn't exist.
And therefore only the property owners can pay taxes.
I would be okay with if you pay taxes, if you net pay, then you vote. If you're not paying taxes, I'm kind of working this out with you, and it's very casual, and it's not necessarily that serious because I haven't thought this through really. But let's say sales tax.
Mm-hmm.
Sales tax. I'm not sure what taxes I agree with. A lot of these taxes are not. Look at what they do with the government. It doesn't belong.
Yeah, I mean, there's no way that this doesn't end with the end of America. With this
Not
line of
really.
logic.
That's not
At
really,
some
because
level, without taxes, you cripple our ability to defend ourselves. I mean,
oh, come on.
there's no
But
Department
no,
of
there's a whole lot
Defense.
of
I mean,
there's a whole lot of social spending is something like 60% or more of the government spending overall, something like that. And I think that if we got rid of a lot of the spending, there is so much more than just defending the country. They're not even defending the country. If you really look at it, they're not defending the borders. They're not, even when they're fighting in these foreign wars, they're sometimes putting America more at risk, not less. It's not even really having anything to do with defending the country. So I don't think that we need all that much.
So you would think that if we dropped off all the social spending, we cut all that out tomorrow, that people would be very happy to pay taxes. I think for about 5 minutes, in general, you'd probably be right. I think you'd be right for about 5 minutes. They'd be very rejoicing. All the Republicans would be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna pay my taxes this year." Blah blah blah. Right? But then I give it a year, maybe in 20 years. I'll give it 20 years. I'll give it a whole generation before it's right back to where we are now. This is theft. Blah blah blah. How dare they want my taxes? They can buy bombs and shit. You know.
People tend to be unhappy in whatever situation that they are in. They find a way to be miserable. I'm with you there. It's a mess. The government
how Christians can be anti-taxes. I mean, Jesus himself was very pro-tax.
He wasn't pro-tax. He just said, "Give to Caesar what's Caesar's." He didn't say that.
Pay your taxes.
I know, but he didn't.
He said, love the
I'm not saying don't pay your taxes. I've never said don't pay your taxes. I'm just saying these taxes are exorbitant and they go towards evil things that many people in the country, maybe even most people in the country, don't even want or believe in. But the government is so overblown, so bloated that there's money to burn. And so they definitely exploit that. You know, the people with government jobs, they don't care. They'll stay paid anyway. So, and they're doing some of the things that they're doing is not anything that has anything to do with the good of the country.
So like, yeah, and I don't even know if I want to go there, because I'm trying to actually get at the heart of what you think and not just the outer skirts of it.
Yeah.
Okay. I think maybe we're at a good spot to stop. Don't you think?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's a good spot to start.
Last quick point though on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
If I can. One of the things that Trump did that, like when I said he gave freedoms back to the people, he got rid of some of like the individual mandate for Obamacare, which forced young people even to pay for some type of health insurance. And he got rid of.
Yeah, I was against that too.
Yeah, and some people, you agreed with him doing that, or you disagree with him doing that?
I agree with Trump on that issue.
Okay, and then he did a lot because there are regulations that are on businesses that are not reasonable, and he wanted every new regulation, 2 old regulations have to be eliminated or something like that. So there was a lot of deregulation going on, and that is helpful for freeing people up, freeing businesses up to thrive. And that is just a simple thing to do to help get the country going again.
I mean, I get what you're saying, and I do agree that it's important to have good business policy. I don't have a trust of business, especially big business. I think that you agree with that at some level, but I mean, even small business. There was this Tupperware company back in the day that sold radioactive painted Tupperware.
Yeah, right.
You know, they just it's not like you come up with an idea for a product. I have ideas for products all the time, right? That's probably why I'll never be an entrepreneur, because I'm just always having ideas. But you have this idea for a product, and the path towards getting it to market, it's not going to include testing it for every single possible thing it could possibly do to everyone, right? And
Right.
you're going to try to minimize that as much as possible. You need to make your profit. You need to get this thing to market before you run out of money. You have investors, you've got funding to, blah, 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 right? So it's not like this system is designed to give us the best of the best. It's just designed to give us what we want, and as you said, people are stupid, right?
Yeah. True. Yeah, and there's
So-
been so many things that both businesses and government and the government have done to harm the people, trying to benefit them on purpose or by accident. So I'm with you that there should be like some regulations. I don't know if it should be by the government. Maybe it should. Maybe it shouldn't. But a lot of it is.
It's really just about lack of corruption, right? Because the government regulations, if we want to regulate a business because we want to have it be safer for us, there's nothing wrong with that, right? But if we're regulating it into the point where they can't do business and it's just because somebody else wants to make money, like for example, the oil industry is being I'd say unfairly discriminated against because we don't have the ability at this point in time to have the solar energy be where it's supposed to be. It's not able to take up the reins of the grid the way that it needs to be. So to try to push it out prematurely is just ignorant, right?
Yeah, big time. And a lot of times the bigger businesses are okay with the regulations because they can absorb those costs, which basically shuts out their smaller competition who can't handle some of these regulations, even though these regulations aren't not necessary. So that's my issue, is like the bigger businesses are in bed with the government in order to shut out their competition. You saw that with the virus. With the virus killed the virus, the overreaction to the virus, shutdowns killed a lot of just normal businesses, whereas huge businesses that can do deliveries and all that stuff, they thrived. They grew like crazy. Amazon and all them. So,
all right. So, I mean, I think that the solution to the problems that we both might be facing is something to do with getting this corruption out of politics, the monetary corruption, the fact that on both sides of the aisle, people are just making laws and regulations just so they can benefit for themselves and their constituents, not constituents, they're lobbyists. And my solution to that is, maybe you might not like it, but I think that anybody who takes office should no longer be allowed to make any kind of profit of any kind whatsoever, ever again. What do you think of that?
I don't know. I haven't thought that through. On the face of it, I don't necessarily like it. But I get why you say that, because, for example, like people speculate about Nancy Pelosi and all these other people making money, and even Joe Biden and maybe Hillary making money, coming out rich after going into quote unquote public service. So
yeah, exactly.
I understand
they're
that.
Good examples of this. The fact that they can trade influence for favors and stock options and future job prospects is just untenable. I don't see how we can have any kind of freedom, democracy, or goodness in that situation.
I don't think money is the only thing, the only motivator, though, because people get ego pleasure, people get a sense of pride, people get hooked on an ideology that they want to push. And there's all kinds of ideologies pushed that are towards like garnering more power, for one, but also just simply they're possessed with this ideology that they have, whether they're Christians, whether they're climate activists, or what. They love the ego of getting their way. And I say that the motivation is not purely, I mean, the
monetary,
the corrupt motivation is way more than just money. Money's huge, a huge part of it, but power, and people's just crazy ideas.
No, I agree. You're right. That is not just money that corrupts people, and I think that the reason why I don't have a solution off the top of my head for that is because it's so much harder to solve. And
Yeah.
you can't be fully a perfect society, obviously, but I think that if we can do anything about any of the corruption, we should. And if the monetary corruption is the easiest one to solve, then we should have been solved it by now.
Yeah. What a mess.
But yeah, I think that's a good place to end it up. If you want, if you have any, so Hake is I'm sorry, Hake is linked in the description below. Hake Report. If you, I'm sure most of you here are actually from his channel, so thank you all for being here. I hope you all enjoyed the conversation. Hake, you have anything else you want to say before you close it out?
Thank you, Kaz. It's been fun talking. Look forward to talking with you again, and appreciate you. Make sure you like and subscribe, guys. And shout out to the Snake Pit. Thanks, man.
Absolutely. No, thank you. I really appreciate it. And once again, just want to say, everybody, it's the bridges we build, not the bridges we burn, that give us the edge. Thank you all for coming, and have a great night. Bye-bye.